All right, listen up. Come on, man. Some weeks feel like a script written by the actual gods of suffering right here in Detroit. We got an ex-Lion trying to cling to his last breath in the league, last-minute roster moves, a rumor about a monster addition for the defensive interior, and to cap it all off, some brutal news dropping right before the Bengals game. I barely know where to start, but we gotta try. Real quick though, just a small ask. If you're one of those who lived through Barry Sanders and you're still here, hit that subscribe button. It's free and it helps the channel grow, you know? Smash the like too, because YouTube only listens when the faithful hit it together. And for God's sake, comment, man. This space is ours. Remember that guy who looked like the future of the franchise, and now we barely know if he even has a present? Yeah. Amani Oruwariye. Back in 2021, he was one of the only flashes of light on a team that was nothing but rubble. 6 interceptions, quiet leadership, and the gut feeling that finally the Lions had found a legitimate corner. I remember telling a buddy, maybe now we've got a cornerstone to build this thing on. Been to that movie before. Even in that good year, the numbers were already telling a different story. PFF had him way in the back, his coverage grades nowhere near the elite names. It was like the bright lights of the interceptions were just hiding the cracks in the foundation. And by 2022, you couldn't hide it anymore. He was benched by week 5, only seeing the field again when the injury report looked like an emergency room triage. After that, he became an NFL nomad. Giants, Jaguars, Cowboys, each stop shorter than the last. He played 7 games in Dallas, even started a few, including against us in 2024. But you could just see it, he wasn't the same player. This past May, the Titans signed him, cut him, re-signed him, and cut him again. Finally, he worked out for the Colts and didn't even get a contract offer. Now this dude gets what might be his absolute last gasp. The Ravens are 1-3, their secondary is completely shredded, and they lost Marlon Humphrey and the rookie Nate Wiggins. They brought in 4 guys for a tryout, and who did they sign? Oruwariye. Maybe it's destiny, or maybe it's just desperate necessity. He's got 40 starts under his belt and carries that brief moment of hope that we, in Detroit, know all too well. The kind of hope that lasts just long enough to hurt. I want to say he's going to be reborn in Baltimore, but seriously, man, Father Time is undefeated. Still, I respect it, because in his own way, this dude represents so much of what it feels like to be a Lions fan. You try, you fall, you get back up, and you keep going even when the world stopped betting on you. And if, just if, he manages to stick with the Ravens, well, it'd be something to see a guy who wore the Honolulu Blue find one last flicker before the curtain drops. To be honest, I'm rooting for him. I am. Every long-suffering fan loves seeing one of their own take one last swing, even when the body can't quite catch up to the dream anymore. But there's that heavy feeling in your chest. Was this his fate, or is this just what Detroit does to its talent? Anyway, we got to talk about the current squad, because there are some moves before the Bengals game that demand attention. This week, Dan Campbell shuffled some pieces that, look, they gave me that familiar Detroit being Detroit feeling. The team elevated 2 guys from the practice squad to face the Cincinnati Bengals, cornerback Tree Flowers and tackle Devin Cochran. And man, when the roster starts looking like this, held together by duct tape and prayers, it's because the body is truly, deeply hurt. Tree Flowers. That name might ring a faint bell. The guy's in his 8th season and has been on a tour of the league. Seahawks, Bengals, Falcons, Jaguars, Colts, Bears. It's a uniform carousel. He signed with the Lions practice squad on Wednesday, and he's probably on the field Sunday. That screams emergency, and we know why. DJ Reed went to injured reserve. That's the kind of loss that fundamentally changes the tone of the defense. Without Reed, the plan is to start Terrion Arnold and Amik Robertson on the outside. Robertson, who's typically a slot guy, is going to have to adjust. And when they go to nickel, Avonte Maddox will likely step in, trying to plug a hole that, let's be real, never seems to get small. Detroit's defense is like this. Lose a piece, patch another, and pray Hutchinson's pressure makes up for the rest. Now Cochran. That move is weird. First, it's the first time all year the team has pulled an O-lineman from the practice squad. Second, Taylor Decker, our grizzled warrior on the line, is listed as questionable for the 4th straight game. His shoulder isn't 100%, yet he's playing almost every snap. Campbell must have looked at it and thought, better have some insurance. Cochran has played 152 snaps in his career, split between right and left tackle. Nothing to get excited about, but he's the kind of guy who can steady the ship when the seas get rough. If Decker can't go, we'll probably see Giovanni Manu or Cochran start. Neither is Decker, obviously, but sometimes the simple fact of not breaking is a win. The irony is, he started his career with the team we're playing, the Bengals. Coincidence? Maybe. But football loves these little full-circle moments. And honestly, I like it when guys like this get a shot. The kind of lunch pail worker who carries the helmet, not the name. Detroit is playing on the edge, and every one of these adjustments shows how much the roster is being tested. When we talk about next man up, here it's literal. Every Sunday feels like a test of endurance and of faith. And if there's one thing I've learned watching this team all these years, it's that the suffering usually comes in a new uniform every single week. Hold on though, because there's a hot rumor coming from the trenches, and it might be the boost we need to put some weight back in this defense. Look, this is the kind of news that makes you take a deep breath and think, maybe, just maybe, they're finally learning. With Levi Onwuzurike out and Ali McNeil physically banged up, the interior of our defensive line has lost the backbone that Campbell's system relies on. And that's when, the talk of reinforcements starts, the name being tossed around, Maurice Hurst, 30 years old, 7 seasons in the league, and a resume that sounds tailor-made for Detroit. Solid talent, a few scars, and a burning desire to prove he's still got some gas in the tank. In 2024, over in Cleveland, the guy put up 3.5 sacks, 22 tackles, and 14 pressures. Numbers that, for a defensive tackle, speak volumes, especially after 2 injury-plagued seasons. He's the kind of player who's seen the bottom and clawed his way back, you know? Financially, it makes total sense. His last contract was around $1.8 million a year, and the market now values him around $2.1 million. The Lions have somewhere between $10 and $12 million in cap space. In other words, he'd fit without any crazy salary cap gymnastics. Even better, it would be a low-risk, short-term deal with flexibility for adjustments next year. But what really excites me is the scheme fit. Under Aaron Glenn, this system thrives on rotation and aggression. Hurst can play as a penetrating 3-tech or a 4-eye in hybrid fronts, providing pressure for Hutchinson and holding the line against the run game. When the central front is working, the rest of the defense can actually breathe. And lately, this defense is gasping for air. I remember watching games in the 90s where the defensive line was pure pride. When the middle of the trench commanded respect, the fans felt like they were part of the hit. We're missing that now, that noise in the center. Hurst might not be a star, but he brings technique, smarts, and that constant motor that Campbell preaches. Of course, there's the injury ghost. He's had recurring soft tissue issues, and nobody wants to relive the drama of seeing another key addition become a permanent patient. But if the medical staff clears him, this is a reinforcement that makes sense on the field and in the locker room. A veteran who's been on competitive rosters and knows the weight of keeping a young group focused. I gotta be honest, I like this idea. It's not about glamour, it's about necessity. And Detroit always takes the hard road, never the shiny one. If Hurst comes, he's here to work, not to pose. And that's what this team needs. Blue-collar workers with soul. Now the problem is we barely had time to dream about a reinforcement before some heavy news dropped. One of those gut punches a fan feels even before the kickoff. Ugh, this one stings. We were hoping for good news, but the injury gods keep visiting Allen Park. Aleem McNeil, our absolute pillar in the middle of that defense, is going to remain out against the Bengals. The team even gave us a little hope earlier this week. Dan Campbell himself said he was 50-50 to play, but in the end, they decided to hold him out. And look, maybe it's the right call, but it still hurts. The guy is coming back from an ACL tear. He missed the first month of the season and has been pushing hard to return. He's one of those dudes who hates watching from the sideline. You know, defensive coordinator Kelvin Shepard said he saw everything he needed to see. He said McNeil looks ready, that in practice he's showing the explosion and the read instincts like he never missed a snap. He even threw out some technical terms about bone density and all that. But the summary is simple. The man is hungry to play. But Campbell is old school. He'd rather lose a Sunday than lose a whole season. And frankly, after so much suffering with players who came back too soon, I get it. It still hurts to see him out, but it hurts more to think about losing him again due to recklessness. To make it worse, it's not just him. 3 other names are also out: Siona Vaki, Zach Cunningham, and Khalil Dorsey. Vaki, poor guy, has already missed 6 practices with a groin injury. Dorsey is still in the concussion protocol and dealing with a wrist issue. The defense, which was already patched up, now looks like a tattered quilt. And as if that wasn't enough, DJ Reed was placed on injured reserve. He'll miss at least a month. Campbell tried to look on the bright side, said it's not a season-ending injury, that he'll be back, but still, it's another starter gone. Reed was one of the few sure things in that secondary. It reminds me of the 2000s, when fans would show up on Sunday literally counting who was still able to play. It feels like time never moves. Detroit lives in this eternal cycle of hope and survival, and every new loss weighs on your soul. But there's one thing. Even with all these missing pieces, this group doesn't give up easy. That's all Campbell's credit. He's instilled a mindset of resistance in this roster. The kind of team that gets punched but always gets back up. So yeah, it's another hit, but it's nothing new for those of us who root for this team. We've learned to cheer with a hand on our heart and an ice pack on our shoulder. And now with all these holes to fill, the question every fan asks is, how long can the body keep up with the fighting spirit? At the end of the day, man, it all comes back to the same place: hope and patience. We've seen Oruwariye fighting for survival, the roster being patched up to face the Bengals, a potential reinforcement that's still just a rumor, and the defense crumbling at the absolute worst time. None of this is new to those who wear the Honolulu blue in their heart. Detroit never does it the easy way, never. But still, we stay. Because loving this team is exactly that: suffering, laughing at your own pain, and coming back on Sunday with the same stubborn faith. Comment below, because the conversation continues, and I'll bring you all back for the next one.